D'Souza on the phone line with me. Faye, a big step here as the BJP National Executive meeting is held. This announcement, we are expecting it to be another pro-poor mega scheme by the government.
Yes, so from the information that we're getting right now about the Saubhagya Yojana this evening, it's about access to electricity to all, and I'm reading this off the Prime Minister's Twitter handle. It says access to electricity to all willing households, which is an interesting phrase, willing households. I doubt there would be too many households in India that do not want access to electricity, but that will be interesting to find out what that means. It also means substitution on kerosene. It goes on to say improvement of education services, improvement of health services, improvement in communication, improvement in public safety, improvement in job opportunities, and better quality of life, especially for women in daily chores. So from the looks of it, and this is the Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, Saubhagya, it encompasses a lot of things. But if we focus, like you just said, Tanvi, on just access to electricity to every household 24/7, that is a very ambitious target. We've had several problems in the country with electrification. While there are, while the Ministry of Power has a page that lists out which villages in India have received electricity, there are some newspaper reports that quote the fact that while the electricity has come to the villages, they haven't come to each individual household. Also, there is a problem of the fact that rural India doesn't receive electricity for a long stretch of time. There are severe power cuts, and even when there aren't power cuts, the electricity is actually only about one phase or two phases, and it's not as as strong as the supply that is received in urban India. So this yojana is, like I said, extremely ambitious. But then again, let's remember that this is a government that has always announced ambitious targets. Housing for all, for example, was an extremely ambitious target, which seems more and more unlikely to be achieved at this point. One hopes that electricity for all will be a more achievable target, and we don't know what the timelines of this yojana are. We don't have too many details on what it is, and we're expecting timelines to come out in a bit. But like I said, it's an ambitious announcement.
Yes, and Faye, largely the problem that also the government will first have to address is it's not just the reach or ensuring that there is an infrastructure for sending electricity to each and every household, but where is the generation happening right now? You're falling short to even supply to the households that have electricity connections.
You're very right, Tanvi, and we must remember also that one of the challenges we face as a country is the fact that we lose a lot of electricity in transfer and transportation when it is moving from the area of generation to the final usage. There is a lot of leakage in the system, and our infrastructure, like you pointed out, is not very good. That is a problem that will need to be looked at if at all we are going to achieve the target of housing for all. And like you said, absolute generation. Where are we going to generate from? Have we increased our capacity to generate is another, is another question to answer. Uttar Pradesh, for example, post post Yogi Adityanath taking office as Chief Minister, there have been several announcements about the fact that Uttar Pradesh is now energy positive. We're going to have to see how this can translate to various parts of the country. Let's also remember that there's the Northeast to think about. There are places like the Northeast which don't have accessibility to a lot of things, including basic services. So how is this plan going to reach every Indian, including those living in tribal areas, rural areas, forest areas, and far-reaching parts of the country? So we see that from what we're looking at on our screen, there is an audio-visual that is being played out for the Prime Minister from what seemed like ONGC, and we're going to wait for him to make his speech, as one assumes that he will at this event in a little while, perhaps giving us a little more understanding on how this target is going to be achieved. Tanvi?
Yes, in fact, I'm just reading out from our report that was filed on September 19th, which quotes Union Minister R.K. Singh as well, to say that the centre proposes to make India the #1 country in both generation and consumption of power. But again, yet again, at that point, the MOS for power did not set any specific timeline. So we will have to wait and watch if that announcement comes out today. He did peg India's power generation at about 3.3 lakh megawatts. saying that out of this, about 70,000 megawatts is generated through renewable energy, which the government intends to increase to about 1.75 lakh megawatts. Faye, this will be significant what the government announces today in terms of also, what their campaign narrative will be going into 2019.
Absolutely. It is, like you said, going to be part of the campaign narrative. And like I was reading out from the poster that has been uploaded on the Prime Minister's Twitter timeline, there are a lot of things that are part of this scheme. Education, health, communication, public safety, job opportunities, and this I find curious, a better quality of life, especially for women in daily chores. One assumes the reference here is to LPG, the switch from, the chula or the wooden stoves to LPG stores. So it seems like this particular scheme, like you pointed out, the Saubhagya scheme is sort of an umbrella scheme for all of the things that the government has been working on up till now. Health services, improvement in communication, public safety, job opportunities. This all would look like it's something that's riding towards the 2019 elections. But like I said, there were other buzzword schemes that were launched in the beginning of the term. Things like housing for all, things like electricity. Smart cities. So we would also be looking forward to an update on what's happening on those particular
I believe we've also got Nalin Kohli of the BJP on the phone line with us. Nalin Kohli, we're hoping to hear from the Prime Minister soon. If you could share any details of what are the timelines that the government is looking at with this new electrification scheme.
I can't comment on it yet because the Honorable Prime Minister is himself giving the details. So you would appreciate that, I would not be in a position to immediately tell you the full details. But earlier today, at the BJP National Executive Meeting, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji was addressing all of us. And in that, he had said that today evening the scheme is coming. We must ensure electricity for all. And this is in continuation of the fact that we are looking at, he announced the electrification of the 18,000 odd villages that had not remained electrified despite almost 70 years of our independence being over, of which some 13, 14,000, 15,000 villages have been electrified, so in terms of the work being done. What today BJP, basically the fundamental thinking behind everything that's happening, and the Prime Minister put it very nicely today, he said the BJP has to be an instrument for transformation, not just up to the election, not just a political machinery for winning an election, but a political entity for transformation and change. And if that's the basic overarching scheme, and the critical thing in the entire thing is not just the government does it, reform, the government comes up with a scheme, the party gets involved, but the critical thing is to take the involvement of the people, as he called it, Jan Bhagidari. And with Jan Bhagidari or people's participation, the success quotient becomes high. For example, take the LED bulbs. When it is for a middle class, what he was talking is in Varanasi alone, the LED scheme became so popular because the scheme was there, but people adopted it. People got involved and excited about it. In Varanasi alone, the estimated savings for the people of Varanasi who have put the LEDs over 100 crores, while the corporation will save about 15 crores. So that's an example. Or take the example of the toilet which he went and worked in its construction when he was there in Varanasi. It was a wonderful thing in terms of calling it, and which he complimented the Yogi government, calling it an Izzat Ghar, that, putting, dignity along with the fact that a toilet adds so much more dignity to a house and it becomes dignified for women, for others, etc. So the idea is we need to transform the lives of ordinary Indians. And the BJP has to be an entity that is working for this mission. It's not just election, but the mission of transformation.
Nalin, please do stay on with us. Our editor, Faye D'Souza, also is on the phone line with me, and she has a question for you.
Please.
Mr. Kohli, good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is Faye D'Souza. We're obviously we're watching the Prime Minister step up onto the dais. It's likely he'll speak in a few minutes. My quick question to you is, we're looking at the Saubhagya scheme, and it seems fairly ambitious, but there were other schemes launched by the government at the beginning of the term. Housing for all, for example, which we haven't seen too much progress on. So along with launching the new schemes, will there be a process of updating us on what has happened on the previous schemes that were launched?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Faye. That's a very important point because, again, today one of the things which he touched upon in his speech, for example, the LED, and just to finish it, the bulb which used to cost 340 is today down to 40-50 rupees. In terms of the ENAMs, which is linking up the mandis through Digital India, some almost 500 and odd mandis are already linked, and farmers, some 90 odd lakhs, have started using it. In terms of IT, income tax returns, from almost 6.7 crores, this figure has crossed 6 crores. From 3.7 crores, the figure has crossed 6 crores. So basically, things are happening. He spoke of Indradhanush. If you would look at it, India at 75, which is 2022, has to be a mission to finish the unfinished agendas that have not touched or changed the lives of ordinary Indians. Like electricity is one of them. LPG, or cooking gas, for those who require it at a subsidized rate for them, and almost 2.53 crores have been done. Financial inclusion, which is one of the world's largest programs, almost about 300 million people, 30 crores already. Then he was speaking of the DBT, which is the direct benefit transfer. And he gave an example in the city of Chandigarh or Pondicherry, the elimination of the fair price shop and giving the amount directly into the account of the beneficiary lady, because she's the best judge to decide what is her priority to purchase what. Does she want oil or does she want extra rice this month? Instead of being stuck by what the government defines that she should get. Another example on DBT, he said, is look at the pension scheme. Earlier, you had fraudulent pensioners drawing money. Pensioners had died, but the money was going into their accounts. By linking it with Aadhaar, in UP alone, the savings is almost 300 crores, because those who were either duplicate taking it or fraudulently and not being entitled taking such pension schemes of the government, or had passed away and that information hadn't come to the government. So therefore implementation is as important as the conceptualization, because transformation will take place only in implementation.
Right. To be fair, Mr. Kohli, while all of that is impressive, you haven't answered my question about housing for all. Do we have an update on that?
Yes, of course. I stand corrected. I should have also spoken about housing for all. The idea of finishing it by 2022, so the idea of this whole long thing that I was saying, is that part of the Prime Minister's focus is the implementation, and housing for all is not going to get ignored, because this is one of the critical programs of the government. And therefore, when he says so, he himself says, you take me on my report card. So I gave you an example to show you that whatever he's announced, he's been implementing that. On housing for all, I'm sure the same thing is happening. I don't have the data with me right now to share with you, but I'll happily share with you if you're going to do a specific talk on it, and we can get that.
Sure. That does sound good. I'm also looking at, and I know that we don't have the exact details of this new scheme. In fact, the only details we have right now are on the Prime Minister's own Twitter handle. It says access to electricity to all willing households. It's an interesting choice of words, Mr. Kohli. Do we know what willing households refer to in this particular case?
I'd like to guess what the Honorable Prime Minister is going to be speaking. Very shortly, since he has put it on his Twitter handle, yes, we should wait to hear what he said exactly. And I expect most of your questions, if not all, will be answered. All
right, Mr. Kohli, I'm going to take this back to Tanvi. Tanvi?
Yes, thanks, Faye, and thanks, Narendra Kohli, for joining us here. Of course, we are keeping an eye on that event that's currently taking place, waiting to hear from the Prime Minister more on the scheme.